Right now, there's a huge story happening across West Africa, and it's something that's been on the minds of many, especially here in Nigeria. The story that's making waves is about 11 Nigerian soldiers who were detained in Burkina Faso after their plane made some reports even suggesting that these soldiers could face life imprisonment. But we need to break it all down and get the real story so we can all understand what's going on. First things first, let's talk about what happened. On the 8th of December 2025, a Nigerian Air Force C-130 military cargo plane was flying through the skies when it encountered a technical issue. Now, anyone who knows anything about air travel understands how serious that can be. The crew knew that they had to land, so they made an emergency diversion to Bobo-Dioulasso, which is the second largest city in Burkina Faso. Now, Burkina Faso's government said that the plane had violated their airspace, and that's a big deal in any country, especially when it comes to military aircraft. You can imagine that tensions were high. According to their military, the plane did not have permission to enter their airspace, and that was seen as a violation of their sovereignty. But here's where things get interesting. On the Nigerian side, the military isn't agreeing with Burkina Faso's version of events. The Nigerian Air Force insists that the plane was simply following standard international procedures for an emergency landing. They say the plane wasn't making any unauthorized move. It just had a technical malfunction and had to land at the nearest airstrip, which happened to be in Burkina Faso. Now, I know this is a lot to take in, so if you're following along, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay updated as we keep track of how this story develops. So, there's this huge difference between the two countries' accounts of what happened. Burkina Faso is saying that it was an act of aggression, while Nigeria is saying it was a simple emergency. And here's the thing, both countries have their reasons for seeing it this way. Burkina Faso, for its part, has been dealing with a lot of political instability. It's been a part of the alliance of Sahel states, which includes Mali and Niger countries, that recently broke away from the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Now, you have to understand that ECOWAS is led by Nigeria, and Nigeria is a key player in the region's peacekeeping operations. So, any conflict between Nigeria and these countries raises red flags. And let me just pause here. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, why would they detain Nigerian soldiers? Why would they make such a big deal out of something that seems like a technical issue? Well, the answer lies in the region's complex political dynamics. The Sahel region, where countries like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are located, has been experiencing a lot of political upheaval, and military interventions have been a part of the equation. Now, let's talk about the soldiers who were detained. These weren't just any soldiers. They were highly trained Burkina Faso. Their presence in their airspace, at a time when tensions were already high, was a serious concern. And this is where the speculation starts. Some people are wondering if the whole thing was actually more about regional power struggles than it was about the landing itself. But here's where the confusion gets even thicker. Some reports suggested that these soldiers could be facing life imprisonment if they are found guilty of violating Burkina Faso's airspace. That's a pretty heavy accusation to throw around. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking, life imprisonment for a landing caused by a technical issue. At this point, I have to tell you, don't jump to conclusions. The idea of life imprisonment hasn't been confirmed by anyone in an official capacity. In fact, recent updates have shown that the soldiers were released after a few days of negotiation. Yes, they were detained, but they weren't sentenced, and they were airspace. It's not just about the incident itself, but about the political message it sends. Now, Nigeria has been trying to be diplomatic about the situation. The Nigerian Air Force has made it clear that they are not going to escalate things. They don't want to make it into a political issue. But the fact that Burkina Faso detained the soldiers at all is still something to talk about because it raises questions about regional stability. It also makes you wonder, what's next for ECOWAS? What does this mean for the future of cooperation between the West African countries? If countries like Burkina Faso are moving away from ECOWAS and aligning themselves with other powers in the region, from Burkina Faso's side as well. They have their own concerns about foreign military presence in their airspace, especially at a time when their country is dealing with so many internal challenges. They've been dealing with insurgencies, economic difficulties, and political instability. So, it's not surprising that they might take a very strict stance on military movements in their skies. But, as I mentioned earlier, this incident goes beyond just the Nigerian soldiers. It's about the bigger picture. Regional alliances are shifting and military operations are becoming more complicated. If these tensions continue, there's no telling how they might affect the broader security situation across West Africa. We've already seen how quickly things can escalate in countries like Mali and Niger. And now, with Burkina Faso involved, the entire region is on edge. And let's not forget that Nigeria's role in the region is not just about military power. Nigeria has been at the center of efforts to address the humanitarian crisis caused by the insurgencies and civil wars happening in countries like Mali and Burkina Faso. So, when something like this happens, it makes you wonder how much longer Nigeria can carry that burden, especially when its own neighbors aren't as cooperative as they once were. So, again, I want to hear from you. How do you think this incident will affect Nigeria's role in the region? Is Nigeria still in a position of influence, or do you think the country's power is starting to wane with the relations and military protocols that are different for each country? What happens when something like this happens? What's the protocol for detaining foreign military personnel? How should the international community handle situations like this? It's not as simple as just saying, hey, the soldiers were in the wrong. There's a whole lot of legal framework that needs to be taken into account. And speaking of laws, you can't forget that Nigeria has a strong military tradition. We've been part of international peacekeeping efforts and have always worked hard to maintain peace and stability in the region. But what happens when the laws of one country clash with the actions of another? How do you resolve it without making things worse? These are the kinds of questions that leaders have to answer when international incidents like this occur. But again, we can't get too bogged down in the technicalities of it all. The bigger question remains, what does this mean for the relationship between Nigeria and Burkina Faso moving forward? The tension between the two countries has definitely been raised, and even though the soldiers were released, there's still a sense of unease in the air. As the situation continues to develop, there are a lot of questions that remain unanswered. Will these tensions lead to more diplomatic problems? Will there be any lasting consequences for Nigeria and Burkina Faso's relationship? And how will ECOWAS handle this situation moving forward? I know this is a lot to process, but I want to know what you all think. Drop your comments below and let me know how you feel about the situation. Do you think Nigeria is handling it well? Do you think Burkina Faso went too far? Let's talk about it. And once again, if you're enjoying this video and want to stay updated on more breaking news like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you never miss out on important stories like this one. Thank you all for sticking with me through this, and I'll keep you posted as soon as any more details come out. Stay tuned for updates.